Gangs are everywhere in video games, mostly because it's very hard to find 300 unaffiliated individuals who all have the same idea to go and attack Batman at the same time, especially since it's not a very good idea. But not all gangs are created equal. For every gang with a coherent theme, badass uniform, and competent gang members, there are twice as many gangs who've just decided to dress up as clowns, wear trash bags on their heads, or they just really like monster movies. But don't take our word for it. Consider these 7 terrible gangs you should definitely not join, and beware minor spoilers for the following games.
The name's Coyer Ledoux, and I'm captain of Sudden Death Overtime, the last of the ice gangs.
After the atom bombs and subsequent collapse of society in the Fallout universe, it makes sense that groups of survivors would come together for protection, companionship, and to keep the memory of the mistakes of the past alive, so that never again would mankind for God's sake, don't worship it!
For this ancient weapon of war is our salvation. It is the very symbol of Atom's glory.
Of course, the big question when setting up your gang is, what's the theme? Unfortunately, plenty of Fallout gangs have squandered this opportunity, going instead with a Mad Max cosplay convention vibe, which, come on guys, try and use a little imagination.
Come on! Is that the best you've got?
However, one gang that we have to admire for their originality, if not their underlying concept, is Sudden Death Overtime, a gang in the capital wasteland whose purpose is to bring ice hockey back to America. Which is fine, except for the fact that they don't really know what ice hockey was.
There was a time where every city had their own ice gangs, and thousands would show up to watch them all duke it out in giant arenas.
They've got all the gear though, and their terminology is spot on.
Now you gotta make a decision. Go for the power play, or sit in the penalty box.
They might have trouble fielding a full team, however, especially considering the state of their winger. I get that ice is probably pretty scarce here in the blasted radioactive wasteland, but I still feel like these guys could probably find out what ice hockey was, so they weren't always embarrassing themselves in front of the other gangs.
We've got practice. Maybe we'll cross sticks again one day.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine as to what they're off to do.
Whoever this crew is, they flow pretty damn good.
They're Killbane's thugs.
Kill who?
He's the Syndicate's attack dog.
What he did to Johnny's funeral. That's over the limit.
He doesn't care about rules of engagement.
No rules? I can work with that.
The Saints Row series has never really been about the gritty side of gang culture. Instead, it's been about a bunch of colourful characters unifying under a single theme, like the Samurai Code of Honour, Haitian voodoo tradition, and excessive nondescript tribal tattoos.
Don't you think you have enough tattoos?
Brother, I got a lot of canvas left.
He'd better not be talking about his butt. Saints Row III is no different. Budding gang members in the city of Steelport have 3 distinct options. The Morning Star, whose members are all dressed like they just stepped off the catwalk at Paris Fashion Week.
A remarkable likeness.
The Deckers, who are tricked out with glowing cyberpunk hacking gear.
I literally have the world at my fingertips.
And finally, the pro wrestling themed Luchadors, who get almost a whole shirt each. Anyone expecting to be able to express their creativity from within the Luchadors is going to be sorely disappointed. This is the most homogenous gang in the game, all wearing matching red and green Luchador masks. Maybe they got a bulk buy discount.
How much can one person be expected to... Oh my god, a chainsaw!
The biggest problem with joining the Luchadors, though, is its leader Killbane, who is, to put it mildly, a dangerous, unstable egomaniac.
Killbane!
It's fine, wrestling's not real. She's gonna get up any minute.
Viola, your sun is setting.
Any minute. Killbane's biggest fit of pique comes after the leader of the Saints defeats him in the main event of Murder Brawl 31, and as usual, he takes out his frustrations on his loyal gang members. I wouldn't like to assume that these uncontrollable bursts of violent anger are the result of prolonged steroid abuse, but on the other hand, the gang literally sells steroids, and look at the freaking size of him!
There he is, Bobby. Eddie Killbane Pryor, the walking apocalypse himself.
Could be, he's just angry that he can never find clothes that fit. Would certainly explain the shirts.
So you came?
Yup. I bet you think I'm funny, don't you? A laughing stock?
Not really. I mean, you dress a little weird, but...
Yeah, and everyone is laughing at me. All of you at me!
Set in a private boarding school in New England, open-world action-adventure Bully simulates the life of reformed-ish troublemaker Jimmy Hopkins, who, like many a schoolboy, spends his time skateboarding, taking classes, and completing missions for local personalities.
Ah, the treacherous Machiavel, I love it!
Good. Me too.
Among the familiar high school tropes incorporated by the game are high school gangs, or cliques, if you will. These are groups of friends brought together by their shared values, and the groups include such classic high school archetypes as preppies, nerds, jocks, and greasers. You know, that timeless classic. For the uninitiated, real-world greasers formed a famous subculture back in the 1950s and 60s, based on enjoying rock and roll music, having a rebellious attitude, and driving fast cars and or motorcycles with a rebellious attitude.
I asked you what kind of a car it was. I want to know. It was a yellow Buick. Why?
The Greasers in Bully, therefore, are a gang of school-age teens in the early 2000s who, when looking for a cool youth culture to build their identity around, reached back 50 years to an old-fashioned style inspired by music from their parents' childhood and vehicles they are too young to own or ride. It's a choice, I'll give them that.
You think it's funny, don't you? You think I'm a joke? Well, my little friend, I'm the king around here. Me!
The Greasers aren't the most reprehensible gang at work in Bulworth Academy, but their street cred is seriously undermined by how the closest they can get to driving a souped-up Ford Thunderbird is cycling really hard on a push bike.
Well, hello, Ford. Seems like you've been messing where you ought not.
No, cousins are legal. Oh, you mean Lola?
Yeah, my woman. Now you pay!
It makes you wonder how these 21st century teens settled on the Fonz as their style icon, while the other kids were wearing Von Dutch trucker caps and playing Halo. Unless they're being ironic, and in fact they're so ahead of the trend curve that actually they're the coolest kids on campus.
You guys, take care of this pathetic excuse for a human being.
Seems unlikely though.
Time to die, warriors!
Based on the movie of the same name, Rockstar's The Warriors takes a realistic, unflinching look at the problem 1970s New York had with gangs on roller skates. In it, you play as several members of the gang of the title and have to beat up all of the other gangs in New York, who are probably saying stuff behind your back about how it's stupid to wear a waistcoat with no shirt underneath. That'll show 'em. As we saw earlier, the Warriors New York contains several wacky gangs we definitely think twice before joining, but the number one spot has to go to the Hi-Hats, the gang who control the Soho area of Manhattan, despite all dressing and acting like mimes.
What the hell?
If you thought that didn't sound very intimidating, then how about this? The Hi-Hats are notorious art snobs, and their main issue with the other gangs is unauthorized graffiti on hi-hat turf, mostly because of the quality of the artistry on display.
Yo, give it up for Rembrandt!
Oh, go!
This is Chatterbox, the leader of the Hi-Hats, who dresses like a circus clown and sucks.
When you guys put your tags on hi-hats turf, it pisses me off!
And their hideout is an art gallery full of, it has to be said, an unnecessarily high number of nude statues of Chatterbox. All I'm saying, troubled youth of 1970s New York, is that you could probably do better than the Hi-Hats. Not everything has to be themed, you know. Keep it simple. If you want to start a gang and menace people, all you really need are some baseball bats. Oh, for God's sake.
More tea, Batman?
Where am I? What's going on?
What a question. Shall I tell him? Oh, he looks so confused. Maybe I should. Well, it's simple, really. I planted a teeny tiny little idea in your head. A sort of remote hypnotic suggestion. Very complicated stuff. I'm sure you wouldn't understand, but as you can see, it worked.
It must be difficult to come up with a supervillain identity in Gotham City because so many of the themes have already been taken. There's the Joker's killer clown shtick, Two-Face's split personality, calendar man's love of observing traditional holidays?
April 1st, 5:22 a.m. I finished cutting through the brake lines of her car. From the camera I placed on her dash, I saw her panic. My only regret? She couldn't hear me yell, "Surprise."
Somehow, still less irritating than most April Fool's jokes. Disaffected Gotham neuroscientist Jervis Tetch clearly got bored of trying to come up with something original for his supervillain identity, and just stole a character wholesale from a children's book, The Mad Hatter from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll.
Welcome to Wonderland, Batman.
Still, you can't fault his commitment to the bit, buying a hat shop, implanting mind control devices in headwear, and dressing his kidnappees in Alice outfits that he presumably stole from the Disneyland staff changing room. Ha! Off with his head! Oh, come on, Jervis, you get the reference. The thing is, as a villain, the Mad Hatter is so powerfully lame, so deeply embarrassing, that he can't even convince anyone to willingly join his gang. Instead, he has to hypnotise them with mind control rabbit masks and glowing grandfather clocks, even to get them to show up to his gang meetings.
I'll have to look into refining the neural interface. Oh, the good news, the best news really, is that it works.
I know Gotham thugs are spoilt for choice when it comes to criminal gangs, but this is a pretty pathetic turnout, Jervis. Still, on the plus side, he does throw regular tea parties for the gang members he can persuade to turn up, which are great, right up until the point where he climbs on the table and starts trampling the tea set.
Well, if that's what's necessary, it's a good job that you've already taken them.
Tetch turns up again in Arkham Knight's Season of Infamy DLC, but by this point, the only henchmen he's managed to bring along are entirely imaginary, and he's now speaking exclusively in rhyme for some reason.
Oh, Frabjous Day, Kaloo-Kalay, the Batman's here. It's time to play.
Still, if this whole gang leader thing isn't really working out, instead he could always focus on conducting the world's most annoying freestyle rap battles with the Riddler.
You forced this contraption over my brain. I'll reward you with punishment, debasement, and pain.
A bit like Alien vs Predator, whoever wins, we lose.
Jet Set Radio!
Jet Set Radio envisages a Tokyo plagued by rival inline skating gangs who live only to grind along the cell-shaded city streets and tag stuff with their signature graffiti.
Those street punks have been named Rudies by the people of Tokyo. They roam the streets and cover the city with their personal graffiti, claiming that it is their way of expressing themselves to the world.
For expressing themselves to the world through the medium of street art, these graffiti gangs are constantly being hounded by the Man. And the Man's dogs. And the Man's attack helicopters. Which is terrifying overkill and a ludicrous waste of resources, whichever way you slice it. There are numerous such gangs, each with their own theme, like the Noise Tanks, who are into technology, or the Love Shockers, who are into revenge, or your gang, the GGs, who are into wearing their own clothes. Who said that can't be a theme?
And from Shibuya-cho in the south, the city of daylight, it's those troublemaking punks, the GGs.
But if you got some inline skates for Christmas and you were looking to join one of these gangs yourself, may we heartily recommend you don't sign up to Poison Jam, the worst and least successfully branded of all the Tokyo skater squads.
And in the east, from Kogane-cho, the city of the sunset, it's that crazy monster mask wearing gang, Poison Jam.
Poison Jam is a gang of dudes in cheap Halloween costumes, united by their love of horror movies and their inability to devise a gang name. Seriously, what is Poison Jam? Sounds disgusting.
Poison Jam! Them horror freaks are really pissed. They haven't seen a good slasher flick in months.
I'm very much here for the concept of year-round Halloween costumes, boys, but surely you can do better than battered monster masks. Also, you all have the same number on your faces. You can't all be number one, that's not how gangs work.
Poison Jam is finished. They're worm food, and there ain't no sequels in the works for these monsters. They're in the grave for good.
What's more, their home base is an abandoned construction yard, which is not only out of keeping with their monster movie aesthetic, but also a terrible place to create and display your expressive graffiti for other people to see because it is, you know, abandoned.
HQ to all stations, HQ to all stations. Juveniles have been reported recklessly skating in the Kogane construction area.
Ugh, I give up. I'm calling the GGs, at least I can wear my own clothes.
I've got my eye on you. You cross the Kings, you'll regret it.
If we wanted, this list could have been entirely made up of entries from the Fallout series, because those games are full of weird, rubbish gangs. Hey, I said weird, rubbish gangs. I would not want to mess with those grandmas. Anyway, I think we have room for one more Fallout entry, and to my mind, that spot has to go to the Kings, a gang in New Vegas' Freeside who are really, really into Elvis Presley.
We're different than other gangs, not just because we dress better.
Not that they know who Elvis actually was. They moved into an abandoned school for Elvis impersonators in Freeside, took one look at the place, and decided anyone that people revered this much had to be a god.
People used to come here to learn about him, to dress like him, move like him, to be him. If that's not worship, I don't know what is.
So that's why they all dress like different era Elvises, and why their leader, the King, talks like he's seconds away from launching into a rendition of Suspicious Minds.
Things have been a lot better since you helped with those soldier boys. Thanks again.
As gang themes go, this one isn't bad. Depending on your Elvis era, you get to dress in some pretty cool clothes, the music is good, and the clubhouse is massive. You just have to wonder exactly how intimidating a gang of people all dressed like a 50s teen idol actually are.
Then I'll stand on my own, just like I always have. Just like a king should.
Unless you tell them you prefer Buddy Holly. Then all bets are off. All I'm saying is Buddy Holly was the superior guitarist. Ow!
There you have it, friends. Those were the 7 worst gangs in games you definitely should not join. And if you're interested in another somewhat similar video from Outside Xbox, may I interest you in another 7 things list? Here's one right now on screen, and if that doesn't tickle your fancy, then why not another video from our sister channel Outside Extra? That's Luke and Ellen, who will see you right with some YouTube entertainment.